Hello, welcome to Sports and Shorts of Sorts, episode 5, Lou Bega's favorite number. So, welcome, and let's start every show like we do. We'll do the jerseys, right? So let's think big number 5 is, you got to think of the baseball diamond, right? Albert Pujols just retired last year. But you got Joe DiMaggio, right? Johnny Bench, George Brett, David Wright, and even Freddie Freeman, who's still playing right now. So the diamond, if you got a number 5, you got some big shoes to fill. Baseball, basketball is my thing. That's usually what I follow, and I think there's no better young guard right now than De'Aaron Fox, who rocks number 5 for Sacramento Kings, the playoff-bound Sacramento Kings. Just Mike Brown has been nothing but great for him. Combining Fox with Sabonis has been one of the best dynamic duos in the league. Offensively, they're phenomenal. Defensively, maybe not so much, but very exciting to watch. Solid number 5. Sticking with basketball, 2 retired guys that jump out. Jason Kidd, Hall of Famer. Not very happy right now with his Mavs not making the playoffs. But, that's the whole Kyrie Luka thing didn't really work, but we'll get more to that later. Another 5, Jalen Rose, works for ESPN. He says he is the OG Jalen. He said before him there were no Jalens, but his mom combined 2 names to make Jalen, and there you go. Starts all with him. And going to hockey, there's a few number 5s that jump out. Nicholas Lidstrom, Dennis Potvin, both Stanley Cup winners, great people to look up to, not really a lot off the ice, but yeah, just 2 solid guys. The NFL was a little tougher. 2 quarterbacks, I thought, of Donovan McNabb. He had those great years with Andy Reid in Philly, and not much else. Jeff Garcia, up in the CFL here in Canada, we'd remember him, and he had some pretty good Pro Bowl years with the 49ers, so definitely people to, think of when you think of number 5. But this being Easter weekend, in April, you got to think of Augusta. Cue the soft piano music, the quiet Jim Nantz voice. But it's been a great tournament so far. Weather hasn't cooperated. You had a few trees fall down. Luckily, no one was hurt. But the third round ended this morning, this Sunday, and the final round started up with Brooks Koepka with a small lead. And I was hoping he'd hold on because I put $4 on him before the tournament. But John Rahm's got the lead right now, and he's playing pretty well. But Phil Mickelson, Phil the Thrill, threw it in the time machine, actually having no time machine. This was his best final round ever, and he is the oldest person to be finishing the top 5. And if John Rahm has a collapse while we're recording, Phil could end up winning this thing. So it should make for a good ending. We'll be tuning into that after the recording here. But it's Easter, we got to get this recorded. We got things to do. But as I mentioned, with De'Aaron Fox basketball, this is the last day of the season. All the teams are playing. Not a lot to play for. Teams kind of know where they are, know who's not in, who's in. And usually not a lot happens, but just before recording, big news popped out. Rudy Gobert threw a punch in the little huddle after a timeout. He threw a punch at Kyle Anderson, kind of hit him in the chest, little Draymond-esque there, immediately broken up, halftime happened. They sent Rudy Gobert home. He was home from the team. That's not what you want going into a play-in, possible playoff situation, but it is what it is, right? Tempers flare, and we'll see what happens with the Minnesota Timberwolves. But as I did mention, the play-in game, that starts on Tuesday, right away here. And what you do with those, you have the 8th and 7th seeds play. The winner of that game, they move into the playoffs. They got the 7th seed, they're locked in. The 8th, the loser of that game, they drop down and play the winner of the 10th, 9th game. To win in the 10th, 9th game, plays the loser of the 7th, 8th, and that's how they figure it out. A little confusing, but they brought some more teams into the playoff mix, more money, more problems. It all works out, I guess. And, we'll be more into the playoffs because these play-in games are happening during the week, so we'll be partially into it next time we're recording, but if I have to throw 2 teams out there that I think could, it could be a lot of teams, not quite March Madness crazy, but my teams I'm throwing out are the LA Clippers. If healthy, they are one of the best teams, and the Philadelphia 76ers. I think this is the year Joel Embiid goes over the hump and makes it. And I also think he'll get the MVP this year. It's been a 3-horse race between him, Giannis, and the Joker, but I think this is the year that it's going to Embiid. Just my thoughts, but we'll see. And I guess there's already been 2 coaching changes in the NBA. Like, literally, this is the last day of the year. Steven Silas out of Houston. I felt that was a tough rap. When he went there, he thought he was getting James Harden, who already wanted to trade. So it's been tough for him. That job is still potentially good. There was a good young core there. Just need maybe 1 or 2 more vets, see what they can do going forward. And Dwayne Casey was leaving the Pistons bench to go up into the front office. I like Dwayne Casey, former Raptor coach. He's a solid dude, and I hope the best for him. And the Pistons could be something to watch out next year with Cade Cunningham coming back. And the NHL, that season's winding up. When's the last game? February 14th. That season will be done, and the playoffs will be going. We'll have a better preview next episode as the playoffs kind of line up there. Big news, though, UFC. I didn't see the whole card, but I had to watch the Adesanya fight. Israel against his rematch against Pereira. And it looked like Pereira, like, I don't watch tons, but it looked like Pereira was winning. Like, his kicks were landing, and they were pretty powerful kicks. But as he was doing a little fury there, tried a knee, Adesanya came, boom, over the top and, like, knocked him right down. He went in for one hammer punch, and he's like, wow, this guy's done. And then he did a sweet little taunt with shooting arrows at him. Legolas would have been proud. It was, it's pretty weird. I always find that weird in UFC where you taunt over someone knocked out. You don't see that in a lot of sports anymore. You know, you have a few older shots from the 70s and Muhammad Ali's famous one, but you don't see it other than in combat sports. But, yeah, it was a crazy match. But, yeah, definitely something I enjoyed. And, yeah, baseball still be in full swing. I almost said Devil Rays, but the Tampa Bay Rays, you haven't used Devil Rays in some time back. I think the Devils probably making a comeback, though. We might see Devil Rays again. But until then, they are off to 11-0 start. Did not see that coming. But the pitch clock has been great. It's made, like, I don't tune into tons of games throughout the year, but I've been watching it. It's been, you know, pretty sweet. It goes by real quick. Not as many, you know, ball grabs and jersey tugs, so it's making the game a lot smoother. Unless you're into the ball grabs and jersey tugs, and you're probably missing out, I guess. But we'll go from there, from the diamond to the pitch. And in the Premier League, we had some pretty wild games, especially near the bottom, like it has been. You had teams like West Ham, we won. Combine that with Wolves, who won, and who was another team that jumped out to me there? Bournemouth, they all had big wins, while Everton, Leeds, Nottingham, Leicester and Southampton all lost, keeping that race tight at the bottom. That race no one wants to win, the race to going down. It just feels weird to say, but relegation adds a whole different mix from the top and the bottom. The NBA is kind of getting it with the play-in, but nothing like relegation. It really throws a wrench into things. And from the bottom to the top, Arsenal were trying to stay ahead of Man City, who got that win over Southampton, but they drew. They were up 2-0, looking like they were running everything. But just like Easter, you know, risen from the dead were the Liverpool players. They rose up. They tied the game. In fact, they should have won the game. Salah had a terrible penalty miss. I tried to call it. I'm like, oh, he's going to beat the goalie to the right. No, just kidding. Left and missed the net. Very un-Salah-like, but it caused some excitement. So now you have Arsenal sitting at the top of the table, 6 points above Manchester City. But Man City has a game in hand, and they do play Arsenal in the Etihad in Manchester. So that this season isn't over for the Gunners yet. We thought the young and gun Gunners were going to run away with this. Man City are showing why they're champions, and they are still involved with this. Now we'll go from the top, the Premier League, to the lower league, National League, and people still think, why are you mentioning National League? It's because of Wrexham, right? Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney, they got me totally engaged on this team. And, of course, with teams I get engaged with and like watching, they blew it. They lost the game to Halifax Town, while their rivals Notts County won a game, equaling both clubs at 100 points. Not many games left in the year. That top seed gets instant promotion to League Two. Otherwise, you have to go in the playoff with Wrexham got knocked out last year, and why they are still in the National League. So, to make things more interesting, Easter Monday, Notts County goes to the racecourse to play Wrexham. This is huge title implications on the line. Like, oh man, I imagine Ryan and Rob will be at the game. It'll be amazing. Like, I don't usually get that channel, or it's hard to watch those games, but we'll see if I can at least have a live update or something. It should be pretty interesting. But yeah, you're sitting there and you're like, whoa, what's the deal? We're just looking at Rennie. I thought you're having a guest today. And Ren City, we do have a guest. And Yeah, let me introduce our first guest. I'm going to have to do something fancy with technology and turn the monitor. Oh, there we go. There we go. I think we got you in there.
Not really.
You might need to slide over here a bit.
Oh my goodness.
There she is, our first guest. This is my wife, Caitlin Shrubsole. Caitlin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. No, this is great. First, I didn't know how it would work having a guest on, but we got it to fit here. And yeah, Caitlin, welcome aboard. With sports, what are some sports that you really like watching?
Oh, I don't know. Not as many as you. Obviously, F1 is my top. It's been a little hard without Danny Ricciardo actually in the driver's seat this year, but whatever. I like my Manchester United.
Boo.
Yeah, Golden State in the NBA. I'm not as great with, MLS.
No, that's phenomenal. You mentioned NBA. The playoffs are coming up. Who are your two teams? If you had to pick two right now, who do you think would play for the finals?
Well, I think Golden State is more likely to be in the finals. I would like the Raptors to obviously get there and maybe get another championship again. What? But we'll see. I don't know how realistic it is.
No, that's fair. It's very wide open. Like our March Madness brackets, they fell apart.
I don't know if I want to talk about those.
But one of the main reasons I brought you on here, especially on Easter Sunday, is just this story you have. I find this a phenomenal story. It's kind of wild, but involved kind of both of us at first, and then you really took charge. And to kind of set this up, I'll try to paint a picture a bit here. We were watching basketball. This was a few years ago, so this was when COVID was first kind of making its thing, you'd say, around there?
Like 2020, yeah, like beginning of, lockdown.
Yeah, we still had some sports before they were gone for a bit.
Yeah.
But, so we were inside watching some basketball, and then halftime, and as you know, we do at halftime, we go outside to the car hole, or garage for fancy people, but we went out to the car hole to have a bowl of, some green, get to make the
It was legal.
Yeah, it is legal, we're in Canada, and, we wanted to make the second half a little more interesting, and as we're coming in, I thought I heard Caitlin say something. I just kind of kept going, grabbed my drink, plopped down on the couch. I'm watching the game. My feet are up. I'm like, where's Caitlin? Oh, maybe she's outside grabbing something. But as I'm sitting there, kind of dazed, watching my basketball game, what was happening?
I like how you set that up. Well, basically, so we have a chain link fence. We have slats on it now, so it's a little bit more private, but at the time we didn't. We're coming in from this bowl. Rennie's saying, I think she's yelling. He goes inside, doesn't care. Basketball's already probably on. Halftime isn't that long. I go back outside and hear someone calling, saying someone has to call 911. And then I was like, okay, let me see. So I could see, directly across, because they have their, door open. And I could see that someone was doing, chest compressions, like CPR. And so I called 911, and long story short-ish, I told the operator what was going on, and that the woman calling for someone to call 911, seeing that someone was doing chest compressions, obviously somebody in distress, obviously location, all that kind of information, as you do. And I guess what struck everybody as kind of odd is that, especially in the midst of this pandemic, that we really didn't know what we were doing yet. With everything, it was just locked down. We don't know. We'll see how this goes. The operator asked if I was able to respond, and having that training myself, I said yeah. And she said, okay, I'll let you go. So you can respond, and if you don't mind, like, basically, like, flagging, like, the ambulance will be there right away and telling them what you've told me, and I'm like, okay. So I go back into, because of course I was standing outside making this call. I went into the house, I grabbed my mask, I grabbed the key, and just ran across the street, knocking on the door. Somebody there is on a 911 call themselves, basically being instructed how to do CPR. And I knocked, I introduced myself, and asked them if they needed any assistance. Like, I guess I've never actually had to do CPR myself, but many people I know have, and it's basically pretty common knowledge that you're going to need to tap out at some point with this. It's quite a vigorous activity, and I was there to kind of offer that service as well. And then I reiterated to them what the operator told me, like, ambulance is going to be here right away. And, like, I guess looking in on that situation is something, like, I've relayed to my husband here and other people. Like, the person there, I could see them clear as day. Like, they're like white as paper, you know, like that white, like, and I knew then, like, it didn't look good. Obviously, it felt like hours had gone by waiting for this ambulance between me, like, hanging up my phone, going across the street, and then waiting for this ambulance to arrive, and they did. But, like, it was honestly probably a minute, if that, but it felt forever.
What was the scene like inside the house? You said this person was laying there white as a ghost. You had already contacted them. They were trying to do the CPR. Could you sense the panic in them? Like, did they pick up the seriousness of the situation?
They really did. Like, I remember, like, knocking and saying my name, and then person on the phone, it's like, there's some lady here telling me about assistance. And then from that, I was like, okay, maybe I'll just take, like, a step back. I've let them know I'm here. I've let them know I'm here to help. But I think in their situation, too, they're still in that same sense of chaos and panic, being like, okay, I can only listen to one person at the time. And me being like, well, the person they should listen to is obviously the operator telling them how to do CPR. So then I literally kind of just stood on their front step being like, holy fuck, like, where's the ambulance? I'm not hearing sirens. I'm not hearing anything. I'm not seeing anything. There's people outside, like, staring at me being like, what is this, like, crazy woman doing? You thinking the same thing? I'm quite a nosy neighbor. I guess I always kind of know what's going on in the neighborhood. So you basically had the thinking that that's all I was doing is just inserting myself into something until...
That is kind of what because I was sitting there, and I heard the door open, and Caitlin grabbed her keys, and I wasn't thinking much of it, and I was watching the game, and as my eyes were kind of going across the screen, they kept going to the window, and I'm like, is that Caitlin across the street? So me and our cat Nermal both go up, and we're looking across the street, like, what is she doing over there? And, you said the ambulance showed up, and...
Yeah, and I guess maybe it's just the Grey's Anatomy watching, or the house, where an ambulance typically just says 2 people. Please don't quote me on this, I obviously don't know the protocol clearly from the rest of this, but there was 3, and I was like, okay. Anyways, the first person gets out, starts doing, if you work in healthcare or have been in the hospital, you generally have seen somebody in the yellow gown and the face mask, everything, which is what everybody was using during COVID. PPE is, I guess, most people know. And, one person, like, I don't know where they even came from. It seemed like they sprang out of the ambulance, like, in that moment. They were just grabbing everything, and so I was telling them, the race I thought the person was, like, late 20s, early 30s. You're gonna need, like, all the naloxone you have. They asked if I administered any. I said I didn't. And I said, that my estimate of time of how long compressions had been going on for, and the fact that the person was unconscious. And then they just said, okay, thank you. And then I kind of was like, okay, and I'll go across the street, go back home, I'm fine, whatever. Get in the door, and it was like this wave hit me of what actually just happened. It was a matter of minutes, felt like hours. And at our back door, we just have like 3 steps, and then it's the kitchen. And I ended up just like hitting my back against the wall in the doorway, like sideways, and just like slumped down and started bawling my eyes out, because now I'm just like all like feeling all these emotions of what is going on, and just seeing someone who, I'm obviously, again, I can't speak, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, I'm not anything, but the person, to me, they looked like they were almost deceased. And then that happened. I know a little bit later, I saw the person walking actually to the ambulance, and I remember saying to you, that doesn't even look like the same person. But I like at that time, I just like slumped down crying, and in the midst of COVID and Rennie watching basketball, he looks at me still sitting, like he didn't get up or anything, but he was still on the couch, looks through the kitchen, like from the living room to where I'm sitting, sobbing my eyes out, like barely audible, making god-awful noises, and says, could you please just wash your hands? I know you've been through a lot.
This COVID was new. We didn't know what to expect. And, yeah, she really jumped to the occasion. I had no idea any of this was happening. I was gung-ho on watching my hoops. But she went over and she made the call to the ambulance. They came and they were able to administer, is it naloxone? Am I saying that right?
I think yes.
And the thing, if you're not familiar with naloxone, what it does is it reverses an opioid overdose. So these are things like, we're almost like, we should probably have one, you never know. Like, we don't use hard drugs or anything like that, but you never know. Like in this instance, this could reverse an overdose and save a life. So it's crazy that something like this could even happen. And I wanted Caitlin to come on and share this experience, as traumatizing as it was, seeing someone that's potentially dead and reversing that and bringing them back. And it just shows, like, you don't have to wear a cape to be a hero. She's not wearing one right now. But, we can all do this. We can help save a life, and thanks again for doing what you did. I was bad. Usually I'm pretty responsive in emergency. But I don't know, maybe it was a tight game. I can't even remember the game. Shows you how awesome it was.
I couldn't tell you who was playing either.
It just seems to happen.
I'm
like
not
that.
a hero, but thank you. I don't know. I guess it's just like that fight or flight instinct.
It's very important, especially this stuff can go, not maybe the overdosing part, but just bringing people back, like the scary moment with Christian Eriksen that happened at Euros, with him having cardiac arrest right on the field, and the chest compressions, and the AED saving lives. We were watching that game live. It was one of the scariest things I've ever seen, and it's sports and life intertwined so much, and it's just stuff that we should be watching and paying attention to. Not just sports, but how to help people in these situations, and sports can sometimes do that. So thanks again for coming on the show, Caitlin. I appreciate it. It's not easy to share that stuff, but again, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. This is a first time with a guest. I hope it went well. We hope to have many more. Again, happy Easter. If you're with your loved ones, give them a hug. If you unfortunately can't be with your loved ones, light a candle, do what you gotta do, because everybody should be loved, especially on today. So happy Easter. Thanks again, Caitlin.
Oh, thank you. Happy Easter.
And we'll see you the next time. Playoffs will be started. Ren City out.